Goku-san DBZ, welcome back for a new special top 10 list. And this time, I'm personally mentioning 10 special metal albums. 10 albums that made me personally a fan of metal music. And yeah, get a chance, check out some of the Rammstein shirts online on their official website. But with that said, these are 10 albums that made me and become passionate and love the whole genre of metal music. Now, most of these albums are going to be from the 80s to the early 2000s. It wasn't until really the late 90s, early 2000s that I really started getting into metal music. Prior to really the early 2000s, I mainly listened to pop rock and normal rock, aka also like alternative rock and grunge is what I listened to mostly until really the late 90s, early 2000s. But mostly classic rock, to be fair. But it was in that time period, during the rise of nu metal, that really I was introduced to metal. Now, this list, I'm looking at what I consider metal bands. Some nu metal bands I don't really consider metal, like Linkin Park. Linkin Park, even though they were dubbed nu metal, they're really hard rock, alternative rock. They were never really metal. So with that said, and there's no real specific order top 10 list, even though it's a top 10. Really, there's no actual rankings. This is just 10 albums that hold a special place for me. So with that said, the first of the 10 albums that holds a special place for me that got me really into metal as a whole, actually was from this band, Rammstein, which I was first introduced to Rammstein actually on the ending credits of one of my ultimate guilty pleasure movies of all time, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I was actually introduced at the end credits music of the movie. I was introduced to my first ever song I heard from Rammstein. Some people, the first song they heard from Rammstein was off their first album, the song Rammstein, which was in a movie called Lost Highway, and the song was featured in some other movie. Then some other stuff would appear here and there. Now, most people know Rammstein best for another song off the album that I heard song from. Most people, it was Du hast. It was the first song I ever heard from Rammstein. For me, it wasn't Du hast. It was their song Engel, which I believe is track number 2 on the album Sehnsucht, their second studio album. But that is the first of the 10 albums, metal albums, that hold a special place for me personally, is Sehnsucht by Rammstein. It would not only be my introduction into German metal, Sehnsucht would also be my introduction into industrial metal, which is one of my top 5 favorite genres slash subgenres of metal music. So I have nothing but thank you and appreciation for Rammstein. I will always have a special place in my heart for this band. I've owned every single one of their albums physical. One of the few bands I've actually gone out of my way to have physical copies. Even 2 copies of Sehnsucht. First version of the album released had a English dubbing of Engel, and also had an English dub of Du hast. Now, the English dubbing of Du hast is actually incorrect. You see, in the English dub, they say, you hate me. But Du hast translate actually is you will me. So they changed it just, I guess, to make it appeal more to West American metal fans, I'm not sure. And of course, Engel, which translate is German for angel. So that gives you a little bit idea. If you're curious at all about the lyrics, you can easily look it up here on YouTube or on Wikipedia and see the English lyrics. But yeah, Angle would be the first ever Rammstein song I would ever hear, and it helped introduce me to one of the 10 metal albums that hold a special place for me. So thank you, Rammstein, and thank you, Senslet. A second of 10 special albums for me personally is, I'm sure everyone knows this band. This was the second of the big four of thrash that I was introduced to. And the second one of the big four was, of course, Metallica. Most people first, probably, of the big four that they were introduced to was Metallica. But for me, it was the second of the big four I was introduced to. But like many people, I'm sure, out there, though I was not introduced to their 80s work first, I was introduced to the Black Album, the self-titled album, which was, I believe, 1991 it was originally released. But yeah, it would be the first Metallica album I ever owned. Personally, I ever actually bothered to go out and buy. It was like my third thrash album I ever bought. But the self-titled from Metallica will always hold a special place for me. Especially, obviously, the song that introduced me to Metallica was, of course, Enter Sandman, which I'm sure is the way for many people. There's a lot of people that will go out there and, of course, say that, obviously, Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets, Justice for All, or whatever, are the best. I can see where they're coming from. I will admit, Ride the Lightning, as time has progressed, I feel I personally like it probably more than actually Master of Puppets. But that's just me. But my personal favorite Metallica album will always be the self-titled, the Black Album, just because it's what introduced me to the band in the first place, and one of the first albums I was ever introduced to of thrash, which is my favorite genre of metal. Third of the special albums from artists that I was introduced to was the first thrash band, the first of the big four I was introduced to, which was, of course, Megadeth. And the first Megadeth album, which I was introduced to and appreciate, was, of course, Countdown to Extinction. The first song I heard off of it was actually Almost Honest. It was the very first song I ever heard from the album. It has arguably become easily one of my favorite metal albums of all time, but Countdown to Extinction holds a very special place for me personally. It's just such a good album, and I love the song Countdown to Extinction more than actually a certain other song off the album that most people say is their best song, though I can see where they're coming from. And I'm quickly playing backwards the music just so keep it going longer. Next, fourth of the 10 albums that hold a special place for me personally is actually of a particular band known as more specializing in prog. This would be the band that first introduced me to progressive metal. That is, of course, the band Dream Theater, which is arguably one of my personal favorite metal bands of all time, and in general one of my favorite bands of all time. Dream Theater showed me real potential of what metal could do, not just bashing drums and guitar and stuff, but they are a real greatness when it comes to their craft of music. Arguably, prog is fascinating to me, and how in-depth it is. I mean, Dream Theater are truly masters of their subgenre. I would say for me personally, though, albums that hold a special place for me, though it helped me appreciate more complexity, though this album actually came out in 2009, this album still holds a very special place for me. It is, in my opinion, maybe their most underrated album. It's called Black Cloud's Silver Lining. It's a great album. If you get a chance, check out Black Cloud Silver Lining from the band Dream Theater. Trust me, it's a really great album. Arguably some really great songs like Weathered, Rite of Passage, and many other good songs off the album. Though there's actually not a lot of songs, because some of the songs stretch 20 minutes. But that's normal in progressive metal, you have to keep in mind. Album number 5 that holds a special place for me is actually the first ever thrash album I ever heard. And it is probably my number 2 overall favorite album from this band, and that is from the band Iced Earth. This album holds a very special place, being the first album I ever heard from them. This was released in 1996. It is called Dark Saga. The album was actually was a concept album based on the comic book character Spawn. And that's no surprise, because if you look at the cover of Dark Saga, it's actually Spawn on the cover. They actually managed to get Todd McFarlane to do the artwork for the album Dark Saga, which is awesome. You do a concept album about Spawn, and you even get Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn, to do artwork for the album. That's pretty cool. He would also help do artwork for their previous album, released in 1995, and they would then use his artwork as the second cover for the album, and that is Burnt Offerings, which personally, I gotta admit, is pretty good artwork, and you can definitely tell it's Todd McFarlane. But that is 5th for me, is Dark Saga from Iced Earth. Number 6 is from, of course, the master of shock rock and metal himself. That is, of course, Marilyn Manson. And the album that really got me into Manson, though I actually heard a few songs from his earlier work, Smells Like Children. I will say, though, that's a relatively weak and not a great album, in my opinion, of earlier Manson work. For me, though, I would say the 6th spot of albums for me personally is his album Antichrist Superstar. Easily, in my opinion, the best of his earlier work. Of his later work, in my opinion, Hell Emperor is his best album. But definitely of his earlier stuff, Antichrist Superstar is a great album. Definitely a good album to be really introduced to when it comes to Marilyn Manson. Coming in at number 7, or not really specific, but whatever, the 7th album for me that holds a special place is, I would have to go with a particular band I love, which is Iron Maiden, and their specific album. Now, most people, their favorite album is The Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. Great album, arguably, not going to debate that, but for me personally, this was the first Iron Maiden album I ever heard, so it holds a very special place, and it's responsible for 2 of my favorite songs. Was it 1, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Aces High, and that is Power Slave. Arguably is the album that made me a fan of Iron Maiden, and I appreciate that. Iron Maiden is my favorite metal band of all time, and a lot of that has to do with Power Slave. Coming in, or rather, the 8th album for me personally is an album that actually, I guess, hard to say, depends on your opinion on things, but actually it was released in 2000 by the new metal band Disturbed, and of course that being their debut album, Sickness. Though Down With the Sickness was not the first song I ever heard from the album, it was actually Shout 2000, their cover of Shout, which I gotta admit I really liked, and I actually heard their cover of Shout before I actually heard the original version of the song from Tears for Fears. Still a great album, definitely a good debut, though I dare say 10,000 Fists, I think, is Disturbed's pretty much the best between that and Asylum. But still holds a special place for me, being the very first Disturbed album. and the music is superb. The ninth album for me personally is a particular band that is responsible for making me a fan of symphonic metal in the first place. And that is, and even though technically speaking, I can see how some people don't consider them metal. Yeah, maybe they were new metal, but still, they definitely had good metal riffs and stuff on some of the songs. And come at the ninth album for me is Fallen by Evanescence. Even though Fallen is not their best album in my opinion, that would be their second studio album for many great songs like Lithium and others. But there's something special about songs on Fallen. Like, I know Bring Me Life has become kind of a meme, but songs like My Immortal are superb. I like the band version better, where it hits hard at the end. Work-wise, Imaginary is a really good song. Also, I would say songs like Everybody's Full, Going Under. I mean, there's many great songs. And the 10th album, it's sort of a guilty pleasure album, I'll be honest. But whatever. This album is what got me into goth music in the first place. I give a lot of credit to this band. That was their 2000 album. And what introduced me to this band and this album was their cover of the Chris Isaak classic, Wicked Game. And of course that is from His Infernal Majesty, Him. And that would be their 2000 album, Razorblade Romance. But yeah, Him, great band, even though they're not around now, which sucks. But I love the band. My personal favorite album is their 2007 album, Venus Doom. I think Dark Light's a little overrated from 2005. But those are 10 metal bands that personally hold a very special place for me. Tell me in the comment section, what are 10 metal albums that you appreciate that really got you into metal music? I'm curious. In the future, if you'd like me to do maybe a 10 list like this involving just rock music, let me know. But I'll see y'all next time, and stay safe out there with all the craziness going on. I'll see you again soon enough. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.